Hi, welcome back. It's episode 164 of Grow Yourself Up. And today I'm joined by Amanda Appiagyei, and I'm going to tell you a bit about Amanda and then tell you all about the wonderful stuff that we dive into. So let me just tell you about Amanda. So Amanda is a sustainable productivity strategist for ambitious but overloaded women, and she's a home educating mum of 3. She shares equitable time management advice and practical systems for life and business that actually work with who you already are. It's very parent-friendly and neurodivergent parent and child-friendly and neurodivergent family-friendly. Her work supports women who want more than survival mode, for women who want to ease the mental clutter, lighten the physical load, and free up hours for what matters most, helping them streamline the boring to make sense for the exciting. So Amanda actually shares in the episode about how she has hyper-focused. In the week that we were recording, she hyper-focused on building this app that she's going to share with you very generously. So it's called Stop the Spiral, and it's a very gentle productivity tool to help you organize your life a bit better. But she shares about how when she is hyper-focused on something, the impact and how that ripples out in her life. So the link to Stop the Spiral is in the show notes, and you can connect with Amanda on Instagram at Amanda Appiagyei, and the links and her website, which is unmuddled.co or .co, are all in the show notes. But this is a really rich and wide-ranging discussion. And we dive into Amanda's path to motherhood, raising neurodivergent kids when you yourself are neurodivergent. We talk about how she manages to home educate, how she kind of structures her days for maximum sanity. She is actually a very exciting. I was excited to chat to her because she is actually a second generation home educator. So she is the eldest of 5, and her mother home educated her and her siblings. I'm not sure if it was continuous, but you'll hear more of the story in the podcast. And Amanda shares about how she kind of makes her days manageable. I really appreciated the depth of kind of practicality she went into, and I'm sure that many of you are going to really love this episode and find it really interesting and supportive. We also talk about breaking cycles in parenting. She talks about there's an additional layer for her because she's got Black mixed race children, and all the complexities that come with preparing children for a world that treats them differently. And she talks about, there's a really beautiful bit where she talks about how she's preparing her children for how the world is now and how it will treat them, and dreaming in a better world. And we talk about breaking cycles, how we have to really do our own work in so many areas to unpack our own internal judgments and bias and racism. And she shares her productivity tool, and she also shares about how she regulates herself and how important she has noticed that is in terms of managing the home education process, and how she uses creativity to support her on all of this. So this is really, really rich, and I think you'll get a lot from it. So let's dive in. Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here today. It's really delightful to have you. Really delightful.
Thank you so much.
I kind of want to highlight immediately to the listeners, that you home educate and you've got 3 kids somewhere in your house. So this is an incredible feat, I think, to be able to record a podcast.
It is.
So tell us about your path to motherhood.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm so excited. My path to motherhood. So I was quite young when I had my first. So my first is now 12. And I was quite young when I had him. And my path to motherhood.
How young is young?
I was 24 when I had that.
Wonderful.
Yes. So I have always wanted to be a mum though. I have there's pictures of me of toddlers with like a baby, a pillow up my top, and a monkey in the buggy. And I've always wanted to be a parent. And so I always knew I wanted to be a mum. And I have 4 younger siblings. So I was the eldest of 5. And so I very much had felt that motherly energy. And even when I, entered the workforce, at 16, but then when I got my first proper job, if you will, at 21, I remember being like mother hen energy. And I definitely very much like caretaking, right?
Yes.
So I've always wanted children. And then me and my husband got married young. We've been together like a really long time. We've known each other for years and years. So I had my first at 24. And Cath, I only knew after having the others that, oh my gosh, that first one was so much hard work. And we didn't realise he had a dairy allergy. Had a dairy allergy, which we didn't know until he was 9 months old. And he basically like cried and was upset for the first 9 months of his life. It was really, really awful. But because it was our first experience, like, I just don't think we knew. Like, I went to the doctor multiple times, but he was like crying for like hours and hours every day. And he would be crying at night. He like, it sounds ridiculous, but he would be up like 20 times in the night. Like every half an hour he'd be awake, crying, his little knees up by his chest. I took him to the doctor multiple times because I was like, my instincts are saying something's not right. And no one ever suggested maybe it's something in your breast milk. Like no one suggested it. Like they'd said, like, I think because he had silent reflux, so the vomit wouldn't come out, which is worse because it comes up and then it goes back down, right? The reflux. So he was just, his poor little esophagus, like he was just in pain all the time. Yeah. And so those first 9 months were really, really hard. And in the same breath, in some ways I didn't feel like a first-time mum. I felt like really able to handle it. Like I felt really like I was sleep deprived, but I've got this. And we would be there and maybe I'd be out with other babies. And I was like, man, I'm really like, I would have to keep moving, soothing constantly. Yeah. When other babies would be able to sleep, I'd be like, oh, sorry, I'm up and shaking that baby.
Bouncing him around.
And it was really intense. But I also, my husband from the get-go was there with me. So we would take it in turns. And we like, oh my gosh, it was so much. We actually ended up doing this thing where I'd learned that if you have like one good night's sleep, it doesn't make up for any bad sleep, right? Like one good night doesn't fix anything. But 2 nights, you can start to feel a bit more normal. So we started doing this thing where we'd do this idea that with 1 night's sleep, good sleep, you can't really recover from anything. So I heard that, okay, 2 nights, you start to feel a bit more normal. So we did 2 nights on, 2 nights off. So both of us were responsible for getting up with him for 2 nights. And then we'd get 2 nights off. And then that meant that we started to feel a bit normal on the second day because you got a proper night's sleep. So we started doing that. So like we came up with ideas of things that would help. But
wow, I just want to really honor that because as part of what we're going to talk about is your systems and how to sort of manage things. And that's a real amazing system in the face of like what is a huge, I mean, having a dairy allergy that's undiagnosed in terms of the discomfort for the baby and for the parents is huge.
I honestly, I do feel like I was traumatized from that in some ways. That's a big word. But I do feel like I had like it left over that stayed in my body. And also because I had medical professionals being like, we can't really see anything wrong for so long. And I took him in for like 8 appointments. And I even had a health visitor tell me, oh, you're probably just, he was 6 months old at this point. You're probably just picking him up too much. And I am so glad I did not listen to that. And my instincts were like, that's not it. Like,
that's
no, I'm
definitely
going to hold my crying baby. And when we found out about the dairy allergy, I was going back to my corporate job. And I remember someone said to me, thank goodness he did. He said, do you know what? That really sounds like my son. He had a dairy allergy. And he said, try cutting dairy out. And I was like, it can't be that simple. So I didn't believe it could be that simple. And in 2 days, I cut it out of my diet and his. And in 2 days, he was like a different baby. He was really different. So that was my early experience was really intense. But I did really feel like, I felt pretty strong and like I had a handle on it. And I enjoyed my time with him.
Did that never send you into like a tailspin or anything? Because I would find that really difficult.
My second child was, funnily enough, easier, and it was harder. But no, I think for the first one, I think I had the time off, and because I was off from a corporate job, I was properly off. I wasn't juggling loads of different things. My things were looking after that baby during the day who was crying, yes, but looking after him, I would feed us and put on some laundry, but my husband would be home. We would split everything when he got home. I honestly think like that support can make such a huge difference. And it was really, really hard.
Did you have friends who had children as well? I mean, have had
I
children
did,
since
yeah. We joined the NCT group because none of our friends were having kids our age, right? So we were the youngest in our NCT group, but I'm glad we joined them so that I had other people who had babies my age, and that really did, that did help a lot. So yeah, that was my first early experience. And then I went back to my corporate job, and we were very grateful that my husband's mum looked after the little one. And so he had a lovely experience with her. So that was just, they've got such a lovely bond still now. And I just love that they got to spend that time together. So I went back to full-time work. And then I had my second. So they're 2.5 years apart. So then I had my second. And I had my pregnancy has been a mixed bag. But the pregnancy was a little bit easier. I think about it now, I think about it now, and I did actually have an experience where I had to call an ambulance to a meeting because I was bleeding. But anyway,
my word.
I just sometimes things come back to you, and you're like, oh wait, actually, maybe it wasn't as smooth as I said in my head. But so then I had my second, but by that point, I was like, I want to run my own thing. I don't want to be doing this full time work, and I'm a creative. I don't want to be stuck. I was in a sales account management role. I don't want to be doing this. I really want to do something creative, and so I'd started a stationery business. So I started a stationery business, and while I was pregnant, my stationery business was not on the high street, and it was doing really well. And during the summer, I would have huge amount of sales. I did wedding cards and stationery and things like that, and so I'd have loads of sales. And so I would go home from my full-time job, go home, pack orders into the night, and then wake up at work and do it all over again. So that was intense. And honestly, I look back and yes, it was a lot. And I'm like, that was too much. I shouldn't have done that. But also, I think it wasn't as bad because I was young, still. And I can tell the difference between having the first two and my later child, even 7 years later, did make a difference, I think, because then I was 26 when I had my second, 26, 27. So that was, and then I had two. So they were 2.5 years apart. And then I had my stationery business. And that's when then I had postnatal depression with my second. And that's when it felt really hard. So funnily enough, with the first, I didn't feel like that. But then with my second, I all of a sudden felt like a first time mum. It's really, it felt really strange. So I was like, why is he crying? I don't know what to do. And I think just the postnatal depression then and having two really hit me hard. And then my husband as well, he worked quite far away as well. So I think that was made the difference, is that the support I had, we'd also moved into an area where I didn't have people around me. And I look back now and I'm like, no wonder I felt terrible. I didn't have support around me. My husband's mum at that time couldn't help me either for different reasons. And so, I realise now, of course I felt like that.
Exactly.
I didn't have support.
I think that depression is so often situational.
Yeah, 100%. And someone said that to me, and because I got CBT, I remember at 4 months postpartum, I went to the doctor and I was like, I think I'm really depressed. And I went on medication for a little while. And I had CBT, which I think can be helpful sometimes, to move past, but it doesn't tackle a lot of other stuff. But anyway, I'd had CBT, and I remember her saying, oh, it sounds like situational. And almost, I was like, I felt annoyed. And I was like, no, because it was easier to understand. It's just a chemical in my brain, right? No. It's just a switch. And if I take something and I'll feel better, that felt like the easier option. But I look back now and I'm like, of course, it was situational. It makes a lot of sense. And I'd had to cut out dairy again for the second. And so I was having to make lots of food that didn't have dairy. And I had this stationery business that I wanted to work on. So I was working on stationery business as well as that. And I look back now, one, I wish I had just been like, I don't need to do this. But two,
you don't need to do the stationery business.
Yeah, I don't need to do this in so many ways. But also, I wish I had some of the things I know now about the systems. I would have put different systems in place for sure to make things more manageable. But part of those systems are support. You can't replicate that with a checklist. You can't replicate someone being there.
Exactly.
Community and friends, those aren't the same things. So there were definitely things I could have done differently, but ultimately, the situation was that I was quite isolated in some ways.
Yeah, but I think often that is when we pull on our work even more, because when we're feeling like motherhood, I know I've done this, when motherhood feels out of control and I don't know what to do in this situation, work is an area we can demonstrate our competence and our agency, and we have some sense of power and control. And
it was the only thing that I did have control over. And also it felt like, I was like, this is just for me. It's not in service to anybody else. This is for
Yes.
me. Like, this is something I love doing, love creating. And
Yeah. Yeah, because you've always got such beautiful colors on your Instagram page.
Thanks.
Like, oh, lovely. I love all of that.
Thank
And
you.
so it's such a hard thing because we're constantly told we should like love and honor being a mother, but without support, tolerating all that lack of control and the kind of so messy of like the whole messiness of the situation is so hard.
So hard.
So
Yeah.
I really identify with what you said about the work.
So then,
Tell us then,
sorry, go on.
no, carry on. Tell us about the third one and tell us about how you transitioned from stationary to unmuddled.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with my third baby, so she was, we'd had a miscarriage in between actually. So we had a miscarriage after that one. Thank you. It was over COVID. It was a horrible, horrible time. And it was over Christmas actually. So I was going through this miscarriage on Christmas Day, and my husband, we all had COVID. He was so unwell and I was going through this miscarriage. It was horrible. Anyway,
That's terrible.
I then ended up with long COVID, which was also like really hard on my body. I still feel the effects sometimes. My body doesn't feel like my joints and things like that. But anyway, we had our third, and it was a totally different experience. The labor, the pregnancy and the labor were really hard. They were really hard. In comparison, the boys fell out of me. I had no idea it could be that stressful. But when she arrived, it was like a different world. We had to wake up. She was the baby who from the hospital would just sleep, and we had to wake her up to feed her because the health visitor was like, she's going to lose weight. I thought this was a myth. I didn't think that was a real thing, but she just like slept from day dot. Like we were getting more sleep with her as a newborn than we did when our other kids were 6 and 3. It was unreal. Like, wow. I didn't know. Yeah. And then also her temperament, she's just like so chill. She watches everything. She's very observant. She's always watching. And my mum always said, like when she was little, she's like, she's just watching and taking in everything, isn't she? And she does. And she's very like switched on. She's very tuned into people's emotions. She's very agreeable to a point where I sometimes have to be like, you don't always have to say yes, baby. And I'm like coaching her through it and make sure that the older boys who adore her, are like, make sure she has a real choice. Like, we don't want to use words that make her feel like she doesn't have a choice. Like, you know, because she wants you to be happy. So let's make sure you give her a real choice for things, right? I help to coach them through that. But her temperament, and I don't know if it's because maybe neurodivergence and then seeing a child without neurodivergence, or just a different type. Maybe you never like she's 3, so you don't know for sure. But it was such a different experience. It's really made me realize how hard it was with the boys. And it's made me, it was, in some ways, it really gave me like a peace and a comfort. Like I wasn't making it up. It was just so much harder. And I have thought so many times, if we'd had her as our first or our only child, we'd be like so smug. I'd like to think I wouldn't be, Cath, but I probably would. So I'd be like, you're just not doing this. She will sit and colour for she'll sit and paint for an hour.
And she's 3.
She will paint for it's wild. She has got such like focus. I'm doing, because we're home educating. I'm not forcing her to do any letters or anything. She will be like, Mama, it's time to do my reading. And she wants to learn letters. She is like saying, Mummy, do Mummy teacher. And I'm like, I'm not your teacher, I'm your mama. She's like, no, be my teacher. It's so like, she's just a totally different child. But it has made me realize that if you don't have an experience of a child like that, you will think like, oh, you could easily be making content that I sometimes see, like motherhood is harder than you're making it. I've seen that, which pisses me off.
I know. It really pisses me off when people say that, because I think that there's, my experience of motherhood has been absolutely battering. Well, I feel battered by motherhood. The idea that someone can sit and paint for an hour, I find literally mind-blowing. Yeah. Especially when they're 3, because imagine how much their attention span will increase as they get older.
Honestly, it is really incredible to watch. Like that with anything like small craft, I can set out activities for her. I can't sit and focus for that long. Yeah. As a general rule.
I know, I can't either.
If I focus on something, I find it really hard. I suppose because she's in that's creativity to her. Like that's something she loves doing, right? But yeah, it's a totally different experience. So then
So when did you find out about your boys being neurodivergent? Like, did that get?
So that was a bit later. Yeah. So in school, because they went to school, and it was when I was filling out all the forms. I don't have a diagnosis, but I think I do have ADHD. There's ADHD in our family. There's various neurodivergences in our families. And it was when I was filling out the forms that I was like, oh no, but that's just normal. That's normal. And I was like, oh, I can tick every box. Huh, that's interesting. And I remember saying it to a friend and be like, I think I might have ADHD when this is like 7 or 8 years ago now. And she was like, what? I thought you knew this. She was like, I thought it was like well established that we knew you have ADHD. And she wasn't the only person who said to me. There was more than one friend who were like, oh, I assume you knew this already. So that was quite an interesting like revelation. I was like, oh, I guess so. And I realized I'd been doing stuff, or because I'm ambitious, and I feel like I'm ambitious for maybe not what everybody wants, but I'm ambitious in my own way. But like, I've always, since I was little, I can remember like being like, this is not working the way to clean up. Like, let's think of a new way to do it. And looking at things and thinking, there must be a better way to do this. How can we make this work better? So I've always been doing that. So I had the systems in place to support me. So I feel like it didn't feel heightened until I was then reading productivity books and like, I was like, this doesn't apply in my situation. I have kids and my focus, it doesn't work like that. So that's how I've now come on to having my business Unmuddled, which is about parent-friendly and ND-friendly advice that actually helps you to be productive in a non-toxic way. That doesn't just make you work harder, but helps you to do more of the stuff that you love and do the stuff that you don't love doing, but you have to do in a way that's easier and faster. And that's essentially what I've come to do. So I feel like that it's been a journey all through my life. And then I had the stationery business and sold it. And I then went on to do branding work. So my background's in design. I went on to do branding work for a good few years. But alongside the branding work, I was always talking about like efficient, like getting efficient at the things that, you don't want to spend time on. So you've got time for the creative stuff. I don't want to get more productive so I can just work more. I want to get more productive at the stuff that doesn't matter. So I have more time for like naps and relaxing.
Yes,
so
yes, exactly.
I feel like that's been a story through my life, and then it's become, as I've now am home educating, the way this business came about. At the beginning, I think at the beginning of this year, I had several people who had come to my home, and especially one friend here who I've made. We live in a different country. We live in Italy at the moment, and we had a friend of mine. She's ADHD as well. She won't mind me saying she's been such a huge champion of me, and she was like, when are you going to start packaging this up and selling it? And I had so many people say, when are you going to start teaching people to do the things that I was already doing in my life? So it came about the kind of opposite way. Whereas before, when I've had business ideas, it was like, I really want to do something. What am I going to do? This way it came about is that in my life, I was creating this kind of way of working and routines and structure, flexible, because in some ways, too much structure is too much for me, but I need some. Yeah. And I feel like that's the case a lot of people who have neurodivergence, is that we need some, but we need not so much that it then becomes restrictive and then we can't keep up with it and then we feel completely overwhelmed and spiral. So,
and shame.
And then we fall into a pit of shame because we didn't get the stuff that we wanted to do, even though we didn't, it's not our fault. So I just have felt passionate about that for a while, and then it's really kind of come to life now that I really do have a crunch on my time. So if I want to work a business now, I have to be really intentional about it. So that's my journey to motherhood and businesshood.
Yeah, really intentional, because I mean, home educating 3 kids and running a business is just a lot. And there's so many kind of avenues I want to go down. So I want to hear more about Unmuddled. Maybe tell us first about the fact that you're actually a second generation home educator.
Yes.
Tell us about your own journey with education in school, and were you in home education the whole time, or how did that work? Tell us about
So I was home. So I was home educated from age 11 and until I went to college at 16. So I got into college on with a portfolio, and I got my basic, I got the minimum GCSEs you needed to get into the course I wanted to get into. So my mum took us out, not because she was unhappy with the school, but my mum, for various reasons, she wanted us to be able to travel and experience life, and she felt like education could be adapted more to a child, and that often the school didn't have the the structure to support that, which it doesn't, because they're teaching a
No.
class of 30 kids, which is fair enough. So she there was multiple reasons that she home educated us. And for me, it was a really positive experience. And I didn't actually want to be home educated at first. I was really upset because I was about to go into secondary school and I wasn't very happy about it. But actually it worked out really well for me. And there were, for us when we were growing up, we had to do core subjects and then some of it was child-led. So, and that's kind of similar to how I do things actually with my kids. But that gave me the avenues to explore, sewing and art and design. And I used to spend a lot of time doing things like that. And also I loved that my mum really gave me freedom to work in a way that worked for me. So I would sometimes be like, Mum, can I stay up and get my work done for tomorrow and then have tomorrow off? And I would stay up and I would be up till midnight or something. I'm not talking as, an 11-year-old, but, when I was 13, 14, maybe going on to being older, and I would stay up. And funnily enough, my writing was neater at night because I've always been a night owl. My writing was always neater. Isn't that interesting? So there was something about that time of night where I could really focus. And I've tried to not let myself be a night owl for so long, and I've just lean into it now. I try not to stay up too late because then I need to be well rested the next day to deal with my children. But I think that really helped me because I got to work in a way that worked for my body. And she gave a certain amount of freedom there. So
that's wonderful. Can I ask you a question about the night owl thing? So I'm also a night owl and I'm really trying to train myself so hard not to be a night owl because the mornings feel uncontrollable in terms of I'm still at a point with my parenthood that sometimes the people wake up at 6:10 or something. And that's not really particularly my control. Sometimes I need to go back to sleep. And during the week, that's not terrible. But on the weekend, it's not so exciting to be woken up that early. And so, but I would much prefer to go to bed at midnight or 1 a.m. every night. How do you lean into being a night owl and get enough rest? Do you have a nap during the day?
I love this question. I feel like I could do a whole podcast on just this. Okay. So, I think that's a really good question because, one of the things, there's a certain amount of flexibility I have because I don't have to take my kids to school. So I'm not rushing in the morning as I was before. And I do have to make sure that if I'm up doing something, I want it to be up doing something that is good. I can't be up. So my limits for myself are, if I'm staying up, it can't be staying up scrolling my phone, right? It can't, I have to be, that has to be good, well-used time if I'm going to do it. But I do have the flex in my schedule that in the morning, my kids are up earlier. But my husband is up. And so if there's a kid up, my husband's naturally a morning person. He's ready to go. He's usually dressed before, he wakes me up, he's dressed, he's ready. He's like, you want coffee? And I'm like, yes, great. So there's a certain amount there that home education has allowed that. But then we get lots of stuff done during the day. But one of the main things that's helped me is that I do get up, I do try and get up. Listen, I have never really managed to consistently get up before my kids. I have a way of splitting my day up called time buckets, and it's like having buckets of time basically for different things throughout the day. And I've tried, and I do get up a little bit earlier so I can get things done just for me, but I try and safeguard that time. So I'm like, that's my time. That's not any of your time. I'm not making breakfast yet just because I'm up. I'm not making breakfast. Now, I think it's a bit easier when your kids are a bit older. My eldest is 12 and then 9, and I've got a 3-year-old, but she just kind of goes with the flow a lot. And I'm always like, if you're really hungry before I'm ready to make proper breakfast, you can get yourself, you know how to make food. You can get yourself food. But I ease in. So I'm not there going okay, I have to go. So I ease in. And one of the biggest things has been having in my time bucket system that I set up, I have things on my list specifically that happen those morning. Not in I have to get them all done in this order or it all falls apart, but I can come back to this and get this done throughout these points in the morning because I know these are the things that need to happen in this order to make things feel stable for the morning, make things feel steady. And so I have a few things in the morning. So partly it's boundaries in terms of this is what I will and won't be doing before 8 o'clock if you want other food. Now, obviously these timings don't work for everyone. Schools, whatever, you can make it work for within your time that you need to make it work. But if you, so as I'm talking, I'm probably part of the reason I'm able to do that is because my kids are home educated, don't have to get out the door for a certain time. But even so, I think we sometimes want to have that perfect morning start. And instead, what if we just got going with the basics that we needed to, and then came back and did those things that would get our morning going, and not have any shame around, I need the perfect 6 a.m. morning routine for the day to go well. So like what I used to do when my kids were in school was get them out. It would be a case of like, my brain is not ready to go. I need to have coffee. I need to get them out the door. I would put on a load of laundry because then at least it's going. Something's happening while I'm not doing anything else. And then when I come back, I would then have a time to be like, right, now I'm going to do my morning routine to settle myself into my day and set myself up for the rest of the day. I think it's tricky with the night owl thing. I think it is tricky when you've got other people's, like when you've got other timelines. Our world works on a 9 to 5 kind of schedule, right? So
yeah, I think it is tricky. And I like, because I mean, that thing about I'm going to decide what I'm going to do, I sometimes land up scrolling my phone, which is not helpful in terms of like what I'm trying to achieve, or just kind of doing random stuff or dilly-dallying. I do like a lot of drifting sometimes, just doing not much. But I think that thing about the morning routine, because for so long, I have had this idea that I'm going to create a perfect morning routine, but those books that talk about a morning routine go into that same bucket of productivity books, which I always feel like I can't achieve.
No.
You know, like they don't work for me.
No.
And so when I have to get my kids out, I literally focus on having a cup of tea, maybe some dandelion tea, giving them breakfast, doing their lunch, getting them out. But I am probably quite disheveled most mornings. And then I come home and go for a walk, have a shower, do my things. Because if I had to do that, if I had to wake up at 5 or 6 and do that, I would be like, it just would not work. I'd probably be I'd probably look polished, but
yeah, but also like that. So that's where part of it is like, well, who are we doing it for? Because are we doing it for, like, other people think I've got my life together, or am I doing it because actually this works for me? And like, I see it a lot, like, and that's why. So I'm very passionate about, and I think I even say this in my Instagram bio. I'm like, I talk about routines and structure without having to wake up at 5 a.m. Like, and if you want to, great, because I can see that waking up a little bit earlier than my kids works really well, and I know that I can't guarantee what time they're going to wake up because they don't usually like, and also best laid plans and everything, especially I feel like ND brain, if you have like an idea of how you want it to work and it doesn't happen, it can be really dysregulating. So if I am like, oh no, that was my journaling time and now it's gone, then that can like throw me off, like totally. Yeah. So instead, if I'm like, okay, actually, this would be an ideal time for it to get done. But if it doesn't, I know I've got space somewhere else for it to happen. Or if I have, 6 a.m. journaling scheduled in and then my kid wakes up at 5:59, it's not going to work the same. Or if it is, then I need to have a basket of stuff ready for my 3-year-old to sit next to me. So that's what I do. So one of the other ways is like pre-preparing your brain for the next day. So, and that for me, talking about motherhood, that makes things easier because then there's not so much demand on me first thing in the morning. So the night before, and this is for all my kids, I lay out stuff in baskets of like, here's some stuff you could do in the morning. So then I'm not having to be like, are you meant to be watching that on a screen? Like, that doesn't look, I don't know if that looks like something you're meant to be watching. I don't need to worry about that. They come in, they have options available to them. And it's just, that has made it so much easier. And then if my 3-year-old comes in, I'm like, hey baby, do you want to play one of these? Mummy's just finishing her writing. Like those pre-thinking things. And I think sometimes like it's really easy to, you go in the moment, but doing, and also I always feel like, where is the time to even set stuff up? But just finding like a little bit of time to think, okay, what would make this easier? What's the crunch point? That's what I always ask people. What is the point where you're like, this is the bit that's stressful? Or what can you do? And it might not be something you can do right in that moment, because in that moment, I'm like, well, my kid could just start putting their shoes on when I ask them. Okay, but is that realistic? Probably not. What could you do instead? Like think outside the box. So then that's when I started, when my kids were in school, when they were little, I was like, right, they need a visual. Like, and so we have a lot of visuals in our house, like for myself, but for the kids as well. They need a visual of like, this is what has to happen first, this is what happens next. Really easy, check it off, like, so you know what's happening. So there's no surprises. And they can still say like, what? I have to brush my teeth. And you're like, yeah, like every morning. Yeah. There still might be a fight, but at least like you've got the structure, they've got the structure, and it's easier to return to. So I think looking at the crunch points is really...
Yes.
And then thinking,
I always talk about, because I struggle with getting myself out of the house and like transitions, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I look at I call it my critical path, and I tell it to my children, like, I'm not answering hundreds of other questions. If it's not something related to the critical path, we have to deal with it later, because otherwise I can really spin out and nothing gets done, basically, or it gets really, really late. And I love what you said about the visuals, because I think, and also what you said about the systems, because in many ways, providing ourselves with a holding structure and routines, because when you said you could really spin out if you didn't get to do your journaling because it felt so dysregulating that you can't get to it when you want to, it's actually quite a loving reparenting thing to think, okay, sweetie, I've got the system where it's given me another time bucket later in the day, because that spares you from beating yourself up. So it's like you've built reparenting into the system in a way.
I am so glad you said this, because, and I am so resonated with what you like talk about with shame, because there's so much shame, how we're meant to be a woman, how we're meant to be a parent, like how we're meant to, like the perfectionism that comes into it. And what I always want to do is, when I talk about setting this stuff up, is I want to think about it like, there's no shame in this. There's no shame that you haven't done it yet. There's no shame in that actually this is feeling really stressful. Like, that's okay. And it could get better. Like, so with love, what could you do to make this easier? And it's easy to say, let go of the shame. That's an impossible task on its own. There's lots of work that goes into shame. But like, there's no shame in needing something that is like this, like that shows you very clearly it. And also, like what you were talking there is about that. I love it. Like, if it's not on the critical part, we're not doing it. So I'm going to do with my 12-year-old, because also, one of the things that's really important is connection, especially as he's getting older. And I'm like, I really want to keep and build that connection so that you're the person that I can talk to, that you can talk to me. And those little moments of connection, often like they're trying to happen when you're like, I'm trying to do a million things. Like, and so having like the structure and this is why like the word structure is maybe not right, but having like frameworks that then I can be like, okay, pause this, remember this, give me some keywords for what you want to talk to me about. When I have these visuals on the wall that are called like my kid's name. So let's say my kid's name is Max and Mum's fun menu. That's not my kid's name. Max and Mum's fun menu. And then I've given them like 9 ideas of things, and they've got a little time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And I'm like, we'll pick something from Mum's fun menu and we'll have this conversation then. And then it's like being able to park that is then he's like, okay, I've been heard. She's not ignoring me. But also I'm like, right now, my brain doesn't have space to have a proper conversation with you about cars. I do care. And then, because what would happen before is I would be like, I can't do this right now, baby. I'm just trying to get out of the house. Like, we need to do this, and we need to do this. My brain can't understand. And then it's like, but you don't even care about me. Yeah. No, my darling, I do. My brain is really full. And so that's why, for me, productivity and the productivity books, like you said, are like, they're trying to get you. I think they assume a lot of the time they are for
men with no children.
They're for men with no children. They are men. They assume that you have a whole wife at home who takes care of everything else, the emotional and physical labor, right? And so I think that's what a lot of them have been created for. I've got an idea for a whole series on that. Don't read this instead. But anyway, but then, so that's what I mean by like those soft structures, those holding places for having like a way to say, I want to connect with you. I care about this. My brain can't take it right now. Let's come back to it. And we're going to do it when we choose your item from your fun menu. We'll talk about it then. And sometimes I've even been like, he'll be like, I'll forget. Fair enough. I forget too. So that sometimes I make a note on my phone of what he wanted to talk about. So that's
so beautiful.
Those are the tools. That to me, like your children are part of that for me. Like parent and ND friendly productivity, that's all of those things are involved in that. The emotional labor, the physical labor, the mental labor, those are all part. It's not just about getting things done, ticking off my list in my business. It's about my whole life. Like,
yes. Yeah. And trying to be that kind of loving, emotionally available parent in a way that's actually manageable.
That's manageable. Yeah.
I was laughing when you said you had a whole series, because I keep on thinking about doing book titles. So instead of Atomic Habits, it would be Atomic Habits only for people who are not the default parent, basically, because you can't be like the default parent.
With that. Yeah. This is it. This is what I have a whole post waiting to go out on that, because habit stacking is another thing. So like, for example, it's just a very neutral idea. It's like, it sounds great in theory. And the idea is, something you already do, right? You then tack on something else you want to do to it. So I already make my coffee. So while after I make my coffee, I'll use that as my cue to do something else. Well, what happens if your kid's like, Mum, come wipe me? So then you go wipe them. And then by the time you get back, you've forgotten what you're meant to be doing. It just doesn't work. Like, and so that's why then like something like habit stacking, I think there's lots of advice we can take from these things. But that's why I really feel passionate about, I want to be like, here's the things you can take from it and here's what might not work. And I think that's so true for so much advice out there.
Yeah, and don't oppress yourself, because I actually took that idea and I do task stacking. So when I have to do things, and especially things that I don't like, I stack boring tasks or tasks where I have to like take a first step and then I can't progress the task. I have to wait till the next step, and I hate those type of tasks. So then I have to stack those tasks into something more interesting or something that's really easy. But I did at some point manage to habit stack with jumping on the trampoline or the rebounder before a shower, but that's fallen by the wayside for the moment. But yeah, it's like all of those things. How can we use them in a way that doesn't just beat up on ourselves?
Yeah, more shame, isn't it? It's like, and this is it. And I feel like so much of the stuff does beat on, just does put more shame on stuff, but it doesn't understand the system, it doesn't understand what's happened already, like why you couldn't do it in the first place. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, you can't do it in the first because your mind's all over the place, or you're trying to do 100 things at once. But it doesn't account for like labor. If you think about your time, oh my gosh, sorry, it's not a whole other thing. It's relevant, but this could be a long train of thought.
Tell us.
But like, so I have this way of looking at time, and I want to start talking about this more, because when we think about time management I want to say parents. Now, in my work, I say parents, Cath, but let's be honest, for the majority, I'm talking to mothers because we're not there yet with parents having to do this, because
yes, it's mothers.
Lots of fathers are not doing the same work that we're doing. But I want to say parents because I want that to be the case. And I know, there's lots of men I do know who are splitting the load fairly and working on splitting the mental load and things like that. However, let's be honest, I'm mostly speaking to women, right? So for me, it's a mix of this. So when it comes to time management, we've often like the models that exist that people tell us how we can split our time. They'll say things like, oh, you could split it into personal time, work to maintain your business, work to grow your business, right? That's one way to look at it. You could look at it as, oh, I spend time with myself, with my family, with friends, my outer community, my business, things like that. What all of these models seem to leave out is a huge part is the unpaid labor, right? That we do day in, day out. And so if you look at, this is how I like to look at time for my people who I'm speaking to, ND, not always ND, but parents usually, or with caretaking responsibilities, or someone who's trying to find more time. If you look at your time as a pie chart, a time pie, if you will, a time pie, there's 5 different ways that you can split that, right? Or not even that you can split, that do tend to get split. So the first way is you can have time for yourself, right? And you don't want to narrow that slice of pie. You want to maintain that pie, or you want to increase that slice of pie for yourself. So that's time in your sleep, time to go out by yourself, time to relax, time to do your hobbies, things like that, right? That's time that is for you to build you up. And that builds your capacity for other stuff as well. Then you've got time with others. And I'm not talking about like the time you spend making your kids food. I'm talking about quality time with others, with your friends, with your partner, going out and doing something together. It doesn't have to be expensive. It could be going out, enjoying that time. So something that is like an enjoyable capacity expanding thing, not the relentless all day having to do other stuff that comes with spending with other people. So it could be community work. It could be community work in your with people near you, activism work. Like that's time that is spent on something important, but it's for others, right? Not for yourself. And then the next chunk of the pie is paid work. So I'm going to split this intentionally. I'm being intentional with the word paid. So paid work, so whether that's a full-time job or a part-time job or your own business, and maybe you are trying to run a business, but it hasn't made lots of money yet, but that is still in your paid work slice of the pie, right? So there's paid work. Yeah. And it as in it's not being paid yet, but that is the intention, is that will be monetary with money. Yeah, money will be coming your way for that slice of pie, and usually that slice of pie, if that slice is determined by like a 4 or part-time job, it might be specific hours and you can't make that slice smaller. But if it's a business that you run, maybe that is something that you can narrow that slice of pie so you've got time for other stuff that you want, right? There might be parts of that pie that you want to make more streamlined or easier. And there might be parts you're like, no, the creative writing part, I want to spend more time on that. So that's a variable slice. And then you've got the bit that people usually leave out in these models, and that's unpaid work. Because if you look at your time pie and where you're spending your time, if you were to put it into a percentage calculator, I bet that for most women who are trying to run businesses, women who have, whether you're the default parent or the primary parent or whatever you call yourself, I don't think of myself as the default only because my kids will go to dad. But I do the majority of childcare during the week, right? But so whatever you call yourself there, that is taking up way more time than we actually think it is. And it's taking up not just time, but the headspace, right? So that is taking up a huge chunk.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about life-work balance, we're not just talking about life and work, because where does that bit sit? If that's sitting in life, then that's not balance at all, right? So that's why for me, that bit needs to sit in its own chunk when you think about where your time and your energy is going. And then in the fifth slice is lost time. And lost time is the weight of other people's expectations. It's the scrolling on your phone because you've spiraled because you've got too much stuff to do and you don't know what to do. So you pick out your phone and you just all of a sudden like time is gone. It's doing stuff that it's like, say, conflict and miscommunications, maybe if that's with your partner or whoever. It's dysregulation. It's like you being dysregulated because of all that stuff you've got on you and you don't have the way to cope. And that lost time and people's expectations is huge, because maybe it's my house has to look perfect because I've got someone coming over, and that is lost time, because actually without that huge expectation on yourself, maybe time wouldn't have got lost. So that lost time also, I feel like, is not talked about. And especially right now in this digital age, so much time is getting lost in that chunk. And that shouldn't go in your self piece of the pie, because you want to protect that self piece of pie. That's really different.
And also it's not nourishing, that stuff. I mean, especially the strolling and the...
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the things that you can then you can look at which bits do I want to safeguard and increase my time on, and which part, where do I want to get more streamlined and do less of. And that for me is why I want to, especially like in motherhood, is be able to protect that time for yourself and your time with others, and then think about where can I streamline, where can I get faster at the things I don't love doing, so I have more time for the things that I do love doing.
And it's so interesting what you just said about, because the lost time, in some ways, we require therapy or some serious help to reduce 100%. To reduce what's going into lost time. Because if I look at myself and I just think about lost time, what happens is I can spiral looking at Instagram and thinking, oh, I'm rubbish, I'm this, I'm that, like looking for external validation on something, which is I'm never, ever, ever going to get from an app, ever, ever, ever. And then spiral. So then you increase the lost time because of my own patterns and my own stuff and whatever, my history. And it also, the thing about the unpaid labor is what I used to try and do is to be hyper efficient with all that unpaid work and try and squeeze it into all the edges of everything, and then feel really resentful because actually it takes a lot of time. Like it takes a lot of time to do the washing, to put the washing on either a washing rack or like a line, or go the tumble dryer, and to put the clothes away. And I used to feel constantly frustrated at how much time it took me to do those tasks. But I realized how much I was making things worse for myself, because I wasn't actually giving myself time to do it. I was just like had lots of stuff to do during the day and trying to do all these like things around the edge. And when I stopped, I called it stopping trying to be magic mum, like trying to stop being like all like dance hands and like get everything done as if nothing's bothering me. And so now I'm just like, okay, these things take time. It's actually a joy and a pleasure to have the ability to have time to clean the house or to fold up the washing, and to kind of savor that, like bring in a gratitude lens to think, lucky I'm not out all day at a full-time job, basically, because I'm working a lot from home, and to kind of honor that it's an important process and it makes the house run better if I'm doing these things. My husband also does various things in the house and he does some washing, but to like not kind of hold on to that perfection, because I think so much of perfectionism is hiding, like if we struggle and hiding that things actually take time, like trying to be like polished on the outside and like scrabbling frantically to get everything done. And so I've tried to really move. I mean, I still have the lost time quite a lot, where I'm like wasting time doing, I don't know, comparing quite a lot actually is something that I do. And I really have to kind of bring myself back to like, mine is the only journey I'm on,
And actually, I love that you said that, is that because when I was talking to my friend about this time pie idea, and I was like, where I can really help is I can help people to get more efficient at the unpaid labor, at the unpaid work bit and the paid work bit. That's like, feels like where that's what I help people to do. I really help them to like do that. And then there's some ways that I can help with the lost time. I said, but then sometimes lost time, you're just going to need therapy to like work on why you're feeling that way, and there's no shame attached to it. It just is what it is. But if we don't consider it, then that can be one of the things that ends up. And what happens is that the first slice to go is usually self. It doesn't eat into
it's not lost time.
No, because the first thing that lost time eats into is time for you as a general rule, because other things have external pressures. And so that's, the first time I came up with this concept, there was a worm who ate pieces of your pie, but it got too complicated and I had to give it up.
But I love the lost, because in many ways, the lost time is part of the self-time, but actually it's the least unloving stuff. Do you know what I mean? And so if we can really reduce that lost pie slice, but I often think social media, to be honest, I'm deep in this thing with myself around, why is it that we're all competing to do free labor constantly? It's part of this whole like capitalist, white supremacist, colonial, all of this kind of thing where we're like just giving away so much for free. And it's not so much about giving away, it's actually about the time that we kind of Tamu, she always talks about how we commoditize ourselves. And I'm kind of really busy with that, around like, how do I want to spend my time? Is this useful?
I think that's such a good point. And I feel like the narrative then around motherhood and businesshood is that it was almost offered to us as an option of like, oh look, you get to do both, but like at what cost? So that's why when I restarted, when I came back after the summer holidays, it was actually really nice to put down my business stuff. And I realized I was like, if I want to do this, I have to be able to do things. It has to be sustainable. So I set myself this 10 hours or less challenge where I'd work in my business each week 10 hours or less, because then if I'm also, for me mentally, if I put something out there, I'm like, well, I have to be honest to the people. I can't just not track my time now. So this week I've gone over, only because it was my first week I've gone over because I hyper-focused and got this app idea done, but it's done now. But every other week I have worked under 10 hours and I've been really intentional about my time, because what I don't want to do is don't want that time. I don't want to commoditize myself to the point where I'm like, I'm just giving away all this stuff and then I've got nothing to show for it. And if I do have something to show for it, at what cost? So I don't want to run a business at the cost of my own well-being, of time with myself and with others. And that's then that's how I want to look at it, is that so I need it to work within the boundaries that I've given it. So that's why it's like being intentional about what it is that you want.
Yeah, that's wonderful, the 10-hour thing. And do you see clients one-to-one? So that has to also go into the 10 hours, or do you sell them a product?
Yeah, so I'm doing, because I sell products, and then that's the thing that makes it possible. I don't think I could do it if I was one-to-one. But I think the whole idea behind it, and what I want to be able to share with people, is that you might have 10 hours, you might have 20, you might have 30. But even when I had 30, even when I had 25 hours a week, I was still probably working 40, because then I would work around, because then I'll get home from the kids and be like, oh, I'm just going to do one more thing. So it's being really intentional about when it's my time to work and focus, setting up my day, setting up my weeks with my focus. And you don't have to do everything all at once, but it starts to snowball. You start to see the effects when you do one thing, because then even just spending 25 minutes working on one thing helps you to not waste time later, because your mind is in oh, I use my time really well there. Let me, continue to do so. And so whichever part of the thread you start pulling at, that's not a good analogy. Whichever thing you start building up, it can have that snowball effect. I found the same when I started meal prepping. I had to meal prep because I had to manage my blood sugar. it's a long story. I ended up on painkiller injections for a back injury, and those turned out they were skyrocketing my blood sugar levels to like diabetic levels. So I very quickly had to like start eating a really low carb diet and to get it back in check. And because I had gestational diabetes, I'm at risk for high blood sugar anyway. So I started working on that, and I was like, the things that are stopping me is that is the convenience of food, and I want it to be delicious, and I really like yummy food.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I'm working in, and those are the things that I need to solve those two problems if I'm going to make this work. And so the only thing that made sense was prepping meal stuff in advance, so that when I'm hungry, I have something that's there ready to eat. Right. So that was me starting this. Meal prepping was the reason that I'm able to run a business, because it was the thing that started being like, okay, now you've done this and you've got this part working really well, what else can come from it? And so I think like that works so much in different things in life. Same with like making a routine for making that mum fun menu that I was talking about, right? And each of the kids having one, that snowballs into other things. Like what else could help? And so we don't, just one thing can make a difference. So I think often like we can have all the ideas and be like, oh, I need all of these things set up, but you don't. Like one thing you just don't know where it's going to take you. Or you could do one thing and then that works and that's great. Like you don't have to keep going. We don't always have to be optimizing. You have to do what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you try and give them, I mean, because having mum fun with 3 people every day, presumably that's not every day.
Well, they're all like, most of the tasks in there are like, some of them are like 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So it'll be like a round of cards, right? And me and my eldest son, we have our own rules for a round of cards. Some of them be like, watch one episode of Bluey together for the little one, right? So they're not things that take.
They're not like a long amount of time.
Some, like one of the things is like have a cup of tea together, have a coffee together. So it's more about, and that's the thing is that, because you've got 3 kids and it's a lot, and I'm home educated and I'm running a business. So it's those micro moments of connection, but it's not letting those, I feel like, and maybe other people don't struggle with this at all, but I hate like say pretend play like that. I can't tolerate. And like, so it's like, it's also finding a way to connect with your kids. And also I don't care about cars, but my eldest really does. And he wants to chat cars. If I can do it with a cup of coffee, we can chat cars and it's all fine. Like, and it's those
Yes, because there's your resource and your coffee. Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, have my coffee. Now you can talk to me about cars. And if I didn't have that, like for me, that structure really helps. Like for other people, and I don't know, everyone does the stuff differently. And maybe other people like just doing stuff as they go works fine. But for me, I feel like having the structure helps me to like keep that connection. If I think about what's important for me, I don't want to not do that. But I know that I will be like, oh, let's just put it off because I need to take you out. Okay, I want to take you out and have a one-to-one time out with one of my kids. But if I don't get time to do that, how else am I going to connect throughout the week? Yes. And those little moments make a big difference, I think.
Now tell us about how you are breaking cycles in your family. What's important for you in terms of your values and how you were parented or how your husband was parented? What do you hold dear?
Let me have a think. So I mentioned this to you earlier, and I feel like one of the things that my mum did really well is my mum was breaking cycles for her, and which then we felt the effects of. So I really felt like, so my mum was really calm, right? And my mum was so calm. Sometimes I felt annoyingly so, because I was like, I just want to fight. It was my temperament and all sorts of things made me be like, I want to fight you. But she wouldn't. She was very calm, and I'm really glad. And my husband's very calm, and I'm got a more feisty temperament. And so I'm glad, I'm happy to have that balance. I think one of the things that I don't know if this is directly answering the breaking cycles question. Maybe I'd have to think more on that. But I think one of the things that has felt really important for me and my husband, and we talked about early on when we had kids, was that we want to prepare our kids for the way the world is now and get them to dream that it could be better. So get them to so prepare them for how it is, and especially as having like mixed race children, my children are Black mixed race. Prepare them for the reality of how it is now, and then how things are going to be different. And I feel like,
do you want to say a bit more about that? Because that feels really important.
Yeah. So
what they might be subjected to on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think I mean, anyone with black or brown children will know that they face racism from young,
yeah.
from young, like 3. Like, you know, they've shown that at 3, children are starting to see the difference. And we've gone through various problems with schools and all sorts. Some of it overt, some of it not overt, and almost sometimes that's harder because then you don't have something specific to call out. But it's I can tell that you're speaking to my child differently than you're speaking to the other child. I think we really struggled with that when the kids, they've been through various schools, which is why we're now home educating. But one of the schools that we dealt with that felt like the worst is that there was constant, like, that they were seeing behavior as naughty. Whereas I feel like if my children were white, and there was actually research that showed that black children were more likely to be told they had a behavior issue rather than like a neurodivergence issue. And I feel like with the right structures in place, it would have been different. And we did move to a different school, and he had a black teacher who just believed in him and also had a high expectation. So you know that thing, if you think about a grid of like, for me, loving, if I think about the words of my parenting, like connected and playful parenting and respectful parenting, if those are words that guide me, then in that corner in the like matrix, as it were, high expectations but high support is where I want to be. So I'm like, I want to expect that, like, I believe that you can do this, but I'm also going to really provide you with the support and love that you need to get there. I believe you're capable of this. Absolutely. And here's how I'm going to help you. And I feel like that's what she gave him. So she really believed in him. So we've massively seen the difference. But it's preparing our kids, like, that yes, someone in the shops might be watching you and think you're going to steal, and that is a reality. And you shouldn't have to do that. Like, yes, there's certain things we're going to put in place so that you are protected to keep you safe. And no, you shouldn't have to, that shouldn't be the case. Like, both of those.
That should not be the reality.
Reality is that this is the reality, but it shouldn't have to be. And here, like, how can we make sure that we are supporting others? And it's incredible how, I'm not an expert on this, so I wouldn't talk at length about this. There's lots of people's work who could be recommended for this kind of work, but that children, when they're introduced to these ideas like young, it becomes it's so much easier to understand because it's not got the shame wrapped in it. And I think if you're racialized as white, if you grow up without having these kind of things, you carry with it all the shame. And so, whereas if we can break that down and introduce these things earlier on, it kind of takes away some of that. So I feel like if kids are introduced these concepts young, there's not the shame. Very easily, my kids were able to understand, like, oh, like, yes, colorism and the misogyny in how things stack. Because if they're introduced early, they're like, oh yeah, like, I could stick up for so-and-so because... And they're very easy, like, it's not all wrapped in the shame of feeling like X, Y, Z, but then being able to recognize the patterns. And so I think books are a great way to do that. Like, we have lots of books, but then also what they see out in the world and how you interact with people, how we interact with other people. So it's all like that, how we have to manage our own stuff. We have to unpack how we feel about certain things and what our own patterns are so that they can see that impact, so they can see it too. Because
and where we are racist and where we are biased,
100%. If we don't do our own work, then that's going to negatively impact us, because whether or not we think we're showing it, it will come out. So I just think, we have to. I think the primary thing. I think also, and I see this. I'm an admin in a mixed kids care group with some black admins, and then they've got me. And one of the things that people ask is like, where to start, like, how can I make sure my kid grows up, blah, 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 blah. And what we always say is, like, start with you, because once you do your own work, then you'll have the answers. Because yes, you can buy all the books you want, and you can buy dolls that look like them, and you can provide your kids with the opportunities to be in diverse environments. But if you don't do your internal learning, how are you going to answer any of their questions? That I think feels important. But...
And also, I think as white parents,
about breaking cycles.
No, that's breaking cycles. That's breaking cycles. I think as a white parent, I've noticed how it can be easy to say, pretend everything is equal. and how damaging that is, and how untrue that is, and how we really have to get to grips with acknowledging all those things that you said, and looking at our history in that, and really unpacking that, and how that what you said about being, I think you said, I don't know if you said these words, but the well-intentioned bits don't get anywhere. They're actively unhelpful. Do you know what I mean? And they may land up being racist, actually.
Yeah, well, this is it. If you have that without your own personal learning, then it's not rooted in truth, I suppose, is that. And I feel like you can sense when someone's actually committed to unpacking their own thing, and whether that is to do with race or anything else that you might have grown up with, that is a pattern that you then have to be like, actually, let me unpack. Why do I feel this way? Yeah, it's one of the things that I think I only really realized, and this is tangentially related, that I only really realized is that how much like my own stuff, and I know it sounds obvious, but how much that impacts the kids. And I think a lot of it is that like your children they're so much their own person. And now 3 children in, I look at it, I'm like, man, they are so, in so many ways, are born their own way. Like, and of course we can shape them, and there's different things we can do. But so much of them, like they're born with their own personalities and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But I so much notice that I set the tone for how things are going to go in so many ways. And
yes,
that regulating myself, and that links with the unpacking the stuff for yourself, unlearning your own stuff so that you can have those conversations with your children so they can see stuff in you, and how that impacts you. And also then knowing that like it's layered on with their own personality, but you can help to set that tone. And I can tell it. And like, so this week I have hyper-focused, Cath, on getting this app ready that I've created. It's a productivity tool that helps you get your to-do list done. And it's a system that I've been doing. I first talked about the system in 2019, and I'm so excited about it. I first talked about the system in 2019. I just saw my friend message me and was like, the alarm's not working. And I'm like, so I'm going to have to go back into the coding and try and fix it. But anyway, it will be ready soon. And I've hyper-focused on getting this done. And I can tell that my kids are more dysregulated because I haven't been as present. And so that's why, and I think I used to live in that place quite a lot of hyper-focusing on one thing, letting everything else drop. I say everything else. I still fed and home educated my kids, which in itself is a feat. And I even texted my husband and said to him, oh, thanks for like holding down the fort while I've gone AWOL this week, because like he's done all the bedtimes, he's got every surface cleared up. Like he's been great. Like he does that stuff anyway, but as in usually we split that. He's done it all because he's got home and I'm like, I've broken my code for this. I've got to try and fix the code. I've messed this up. The time is not working. And I hyper-focused and got this done. But I can tell that I have not been present. And so I've set the tone. And so they've been more dysregulated than normal. And even yesterday, my husband's like, what is going on at bedtime? And I was like, oh, that's because I've not been as present. And so much like we set the tone. And I do think like motherhood is such a whirlwind. And like you say, I think you use the word battering, like it's been a battering for you. And I definitely feel like that. And so what I always want to do is acknowledge that it is a battering. And what can I do? Like holding both those things. Like don't gaslight yourself. It is so hard.
Absolutely.
And how can we regulate and make it easier? And so much of that is regulation. So much of that, because one thing, Cath, that when I was, sorry, I keep saying your name, but when I'm making a point, one thing, when I was in the thick of it with kids, when I was in the thick of it with kids who I did not know had neurodivergent, and I was in the thick of it, I would be listening to all the books. I had all the information, but I was like, but how do I recall this in the moment when like my kid is having a meltdown? Like I couldn't think. I now know that there is actually an app from, you know, that book, how what is it called? How to Talk So Little Kids Will Listen. There's an app that goes with it, which is actually really helpful. But in the moment, I had a list on my notes on my iPad.
But that doesn't work for ND kids.
So much of it doesn't work. No, well, some of this stuff in the app does work, but so much of it wasn't. And so much of the gentle parenting advice that was around when my kids were young was like, I mean, some of them still young, but when the boys were younger, I was like, this is not working. If I tell my kid, oh, gentle hands are not for hitting, we don't hit people, that would enrage them. Like, not both of them, but that was like a red flag to a bull. Like, and I realize now that that's not how I would word things, and I word things differently. And I feel like the narrative has changed around that. But also I just felt like this huge pressure. I was like, how can I recall all this information when I'm dysregulated? And it wasn't. It was about,
No, exactly. Well, I mean, that's what I always say about is that most of the stuff I don't think talks enough about that we are actually the tool for all of this, and that all that matters is our own regulation, really, because our children are. The nervous system to nervous system communication is going on all the time, and now we can say whatever we want. We can say don't parent, like whatever those words you just said are. But if we are ourselves dysregulated, then they're going to definitely be hitting because we're helping them dysregulate more. And so working on ourselves, like what you said about the anti-racism work, working on ourselves is kind of where it's at. And no one can recall scripts. I don't think we even need scripts, because when we are regulated, we know what works for our children. We know how to respond. We know what works in our relationship, and we know how to hold space for them. But yeah. And also,
that's very cool.
Many of us who come to this have nervous systems that need work, essentially. We might not have like a wide window of tolerance, so we need to really kind of tend to ourselves. Now, I'm just conscious of the time, Amanda. So why don't you tell us a bit about how people can work with you, and where they can find you on Instagram, and then any last things you want to say about like ADHD mothering and everything.
Okay. So you can find me on my website, unmuddled.co. And on Instagram is where I'm most present, Amanda.Appiagyei. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes or something somewhere, so you don't have to remember how to spell my name. But the way that people can work with me is, at the moment, the main thing I'm selling is my time bucket system. And to call it like a daily planner system would be to discredit it, because it's like a methodology of a way to structure your time and your days that allows for flex. It allows for you to have a smoother day, but also if the wheels fall off, to come back to things, to come back to a feeling of steadiness with compassion. So my time bucket system helps you to do that and break it down. And I've got a lot in there to help people. And the feedback, one of the things I'm loving about doing this business, where I'm talking about like parent and ND friendly productivity in a way that is not toxic, in a way that is helping you to just do more of the things you love and get faster or more efficient, or even drop the things that you don't love, is that one of the things people say when they have started time buckets, or even just sometimes like interact with my content, is I didn't realize how much I was doing. And that is one thing that I really want people to realize. Like, you are probably, even when you're like, oh, I didn't get anything done, you did. Like, you got
exactly
so much more done than you thought you did. And that we are so harsh on ourselves. And that was one thing I said to my husband, oh, like, thanks for holding down the fort this week while I went AWOL and hyper-focused on this new tool, which I'll also tell you about. But he was like, no, you didn't. And I was like, he's like, you didn't go AWOL. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I feel like I did. I just didn't. He's like, you're already doing a lot. Like, he's like, you're just being harsh on yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, thanks for that reminder.
That's so
and I it was really like, I was like, oh, like, thank you for that. And I feel like being seen, one of the things I feel like is the biggest thing, I'm now not talking about myself, but I'm in general, is that feeling seen in something makes all the difference. If all of your labor, if that whole unpaid work chunk goes unseen, then it feels like such hard work. If you can see, if people like can see it, if your partner, if your children sometimes can be like, can see that feels so different. So that's another thing that the time bucket system helps people to do, is it helps them to see how much they're doing, but also like it helps you to think like, where can I get support? Like sometimes that's your kids doing things and sort of putting systems in place to help your children, but also like partners. I'm really like passionate, and I feel like we've been together a really long time, my husband and I, and we've found our way of working together really well, and we continue to do so. But like that is something as well that we often, like, women are told we just need to manage our time better. Well, how about like partners?
Exactly.
Do their part too. Like that's a huge chunk of it. That's a way that you can narrow that unpaid work time. You can give a part away to somebody who's not pulling their weight. So that is something that I think it helps people realize to do as well, is to be able to share that load. And as women, we are conditioned to take on so much. And also so many people, they just take on stuff because who else is doing it? But what I think is really important as well is that the system, the ways that I work with people, it works whether you're a single parent. One of my best friends who has been with me through the whole journey is a single parent, and she's like, I know you're always speaking to me. She's like, you're always considering that this isn't just for one person in one particular situation. It's flexible for other people. And that's what, across all my work, that how I want things to be. And then I've got a new, for now, it's free. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a paid offer at some point, but I'm going to have this new tool,
Wow.
which I think will be live, which is very exciting, which is a productivity tool. It's only desktop based for now, because the mobile version will be coming soon. But for now, it's a desktop app. So it's a productivity tool to help you get your to-do list done in a way that like throws in regulation and compassion and challenges you, but in a soft me type way of being like, it's okay, you're going to get this done. You're probably putting too much on your priorities list. So let's focus on only your top priorities. It helps you to dump out everything that's in your brain and then organize it in a way that is like, let's just focus on now. It's not a to-do list, because you need that somewhere else. But right now, if you've sat down to your desk and you're like, I really need to get stuff done, how am I going to focus and get this done? You can type in all the things you need to do. It will auto sort. You can then resort, choose your priorities, choose some regulating things, because so often what we do is we drop off kids at school or wherever. We drop off kids at school, and maybe your kid doesn't want to come back to school. And I speak from my own experience here, is that I thought I couldn't focus. And then I was like, well, no wonder I can't sit down and focus, because I just dropped a crying child off at school and I've come back from the school run and I'm so dysregulated. No wonder I can't focus on my branding work.
Yeah.
No, it's like takes you through a process to then be like, take you through a few things to get a focus routine, do the things, set your timer and go. And already the feedback I've got from it has just, made me so incredibly happy. Someone said to me today, one of the person who's given me feedback said, I'm just going to read out her quote because it was so special to me. So this really explains what it does. She says, you can tell the intent of this is to make people feel good about themselves and not turn them into capitalistic productivity robots. That's not what it's about. It's about a way to just manage your time and get stuff done. If you want to get it done, let's get it done.
I love that. Thank you.
So it's a new tool called Stop the Spiral, and you can get it on my website, unmodel.co. There'll be a way to find it there.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so they can go have a look at it there. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And is there anything, just before we go, that you'd like to say to maybe mothers who think they might be ND or and have ND kids? Like what might have helped you early on in the journey?
Okay. I feel like it's not in your head. I wish I'd known this. It's not in your head. It is hard. Like, it is hard. Don't believe the Instagram reels that are like, you're making mother too hard. You just need to get out of the house. Well, I did that. And then what? Okay. It's not in your head. It is really hard.
Yeah.
And what can you do? And regulate yourself first, because then you can access creativity. And that is one thing that has been like guiding. So creativity feels like one of my like family, like motherhood values, creativity. And I can access that when I'm able to regulate myself. And I feel like it would be unrealistic you can't be regulated all the time. But in that moment, how can I work on being that way? And how can I regulate myself before doing something? And I think it's also really, I wish I'd done this more, because I do this now. I model to my kids, I'm just going to take some time. This exchange has made me feel really hyped up. I'm going to take some time. You take some time, and let's come back to this. I regulate myself, and then I can access creativity. And then my child can access creativity, because I haven't just flown off the handle at them. And so I wish, one, that I'd known it is hard, you're not making it up. And two, I wish that my expectations had been different. And that is one thing that I have thought all the time. And I look at 5 or 6 year olds now and I'm like, oh, you're babies. And I feel like when you have a 5-year-old, you're like, when that's your oldest, you're like, oh gosh, like, you're grown up, you're going into school and stuff, and like they're becoming their own little person. And then you have a 12-year-old and you're like, oh my gosh, 5 is a baby, because my 12-year-old still feels like my baby. And so I wish I'd earlier on, I wish that I had been more reasonable with my expectations. And that doesn't mean that you don't expect them certain things, but it means, for example, like you don't make them do writing club if what they really need to do is sport. Or do you know what I mean? Like our expectation of them versus what they're actually able to do, not just based on their age, but based on them. I wish that's what I really wish, is that I wish my expectations had been different. So
yes, I think that's a societal, I mean, I have completely thrown away age-related milestones or that type of stuff, expectations in our parenting. But I think that's imposed massively from society. Like even when you sign up for any class, they're obsessed with their fucking birth date. I'm like, fuck's sake, they might not be able to do the things that, like, why can't we just go into the class that suits our kind of proficiency level? Anyway,
yeah,
I'm not going to rant about that.
Because we don't expect adults to have the same proficiency and stuff. Like, my level of coding cannot be compared to a proper developer's, and yet we expect children to fit into this narrow version of, like, it's just bizarre. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. Honestly,
no, but I want to say my level of coding would be like 10 levels below your level of coding, and then there's your level of coding, and then there's a professional coder. Do you know what I mean? There's so much kind of nuance in that, but we just expect children all to be like professional coders, you know, for want of a better word.
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly. No, this is what I don't understand. Anyway, and also children. Gosh, sorry, it's gone tangent. Children can't learn if they're unhappy. We as humans, we can't learn. Like, you need your basic, like, you need to feel safe first to be able to do that. And isn't that the case with motherhood?
Your body,
you have to feel
exactly.
like, in your body. So thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been so fun talking to you. I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Amanda.
Thank you.
And all these details will be in the show notes.